So I think for me, one of the things I've seen over maybe the last 10 or 20 years is that back in the day, it was all interaction design and engineering and spending lots of time with customers and users prototyping and testing what we're doing. But then over the last 10 years or so, lots of graphic designers have moved into the space and they've added loads of value. They've brought their design systems and lots of kind of Figma skills and all that great stuff. But we've kind of started to focus on the surface and lost some of that user centricity. We're probably not spending the time with our customers as much as we used to do. So that's something I'd love to see a bit more of in our community.
Yeah, I think you present a good point, is that what is UX for us? It is about getting back to the core of it. So what makes a user tick? What are their pain points? What are their issues? And I think the only way you really can know that is by spending time with them.
Absolutely, and I think I sometimes talk about exposure hours in terms of how many hours has that designer or that researcher spent with end users or customers to understand, you know, their motivations and needs and barriers. And sad to say, quite a lot of designers today is very much focused on the surface, and they don't have those hours behind them. So I think one of the things I love about our team is we do go back to basics. We do get in front of customers. So whether it's those depth interviews, the usability test, the diary studies, it's making sure that we're championing that stakeholder that's not present at the meeting, basically.
Yeah, I love that, and I think when we're then talking about stakeholders, I think that they're all stakeholders, isn't it? Because we know that our kind of internal stakeholders from a kind of client perspective have so much value to add. But I think it's about combining that with the actual user's experience. And I think when you bring the two together, you get a much clearer picture of what needs to happen. So whether that's on maybe a website revamp or whether it's creating a new web page, when you understand what the business needs and the user needs, that outcome is a lot clearer in terms of what direction should we take as a UX team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the power of discovery comes in. So making sure we've got that phase up front to invite all those stakeholders in to get all those perspectives, and then we turn up bringing the customer perspective into that mix as well. And, you know, as a collective, we can align and decide, you know, how we move forward with that particular problem.
I think that there's this assumption that when we mention usability testing, it's going to then add so much time onto a project and cost. And I think that's something that we try and challenge in a productive way.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's interesting with that as well is almost like, what's the cost of not doing it? So I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. But there are different ways as well. I mean, when we think of usability testing, some people obviously think it's a lab and there's lots of technology, it's very expensive and lots going on. It could be as simple as just rocking up at a train station and, you know, incentivizing people with Starbucks vouchers or whatever, and you kind of get a little bit of time with people. There's all sorts of guerrilla types of testing. You can do unmoderated testing. You can use fieldwork recruiters to find the people you want to test with. So I think there's lots of different approaches. You just kind of have to pick the right one for your particular constraints. But I'd probably ask the question: is some research better than no research? And usually it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you want to spend the time up front making sure it's right, or do you go through the whole process, get to the end and go, oh, we've missed something fundamental? And I think that's an important challenge that we as professionals need to advocate for. So it's about selecting the right user, or the user at the right point, and who is that audience and how do we find them? So like you said, we've done bespoke field work. Sometimes that takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it requires some creative thinking from our part, but I think the end result shows the value in that. And something that we've also tried to push forward for more now is that inclusive panel. So making sure that the audience that we're selecting reflects the country as it is now. So we know that 1 in 4 people have a disability. Are we seeing that reflected in the testing we're doing? I'm not sure that we always do, but maybe it's something that we should consider more.
So I think one thing for me is really, really important is that whole idea of accessibility and inclusion. Given that 1 in 4 have some sort of access need, it's really important to make sure that we're inclusive in our research and testing and bringing folks in that have particular needs or device assistance, all those sorts of things. So we're not designing for a particular state, but making sure that we're considering, you know, a much wider breadth of people in our audience. And
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that we're doing this because it's not the margins of society. 1 in 4 is quite a big statistic, actually. That's 25% of people. So I think when we're designing and trying to, I guess, make this user case to a business, it's about saying that there are large gains for a business to be had, but also we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. So maybe if that statistic was different, maybe if it was 1 in 100, 1 in 200, I don't necessarily think that that would change our approach. I think we're doing this because we know that when we design for accessibility, we're designing for usability. And often the good practices that might come from making something inclusive help people without any additional needs. So we know, for example, that people with dyslexia struggle to read in all caps. But actually, when we have things in sentence case, that doesn't make it just easier for them. It makes it easier for everyone. So in my head, it shouldn't be seen as a trade-off. It shouldn't be seen as accessible or non-accessible. It's all better. So like you were saying earlier about the good, better, best, in terms of some research is better than none, I think making something marginally better is always better than doing nothing.
So I think for me, like one of the most powerful moments of the past 12 months for me personally was actually some inclusive testing that we did for a client, where we uncovered a huge amount of opportunity for them to improve the experience and improve the outcomes. But by doing the usability testing and having highlight reels with those real people that have got those real access needs, to be able to bring those videos and that evidence into that client environment, and so stakeholders can start to see firsthand almost of how their customers are experiencing their website, it just changed so much their approach to accessibility and really just move the needle. So we start to see more accessibility testing, more inclusive testing. So it's just such a great thing to do, which I'd encourage more people to do as part of their usability testing.
I think that's the beauty of any usability testing, is that there's an opportunity for us to provide good outcomes for all customers. And I think that phrase, good outcomes, is so interesting because we see it mentioned in so many different parts of not only our industry but other industries. We've seen clients talking to us about consumer duty, which is not something that we would generally touch on, but ultimately it's about providing better outcomes. And I think as a UX team, that's at the heart of what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the user's experience, whether that's on a website, whether that's on an app, whether that's a physical piece of mail that they're getting through the post. All of that touches that user's experience.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I love that we're doing at the moment, is we're almost, getting outside and away from the screen. So a lot of user experience is focused on those surface designs, it's focused on those Figma things, but actually what we're doing is we're thinking about that customer and whatever touch points they're having. So yeah, I think consumer duty is just one great example how there's a particular vertical within finance where actually we can repurpose a lot of what we do in UX and make sure that we're creating better outcomes, not just for users, but for those with access needs, but just vulnerable customers as well, and making sure that we're getting the best outcomes for both the customer and the business.
Absolutely, and I think all of these things are ultimately protecting and helping our clients, which, at the end of the day, that's what we're being marked against. And it's great to see our clients getting behind that and really championing that. And I think that speaks volumes about, where the industry is moving towards. It's not just about making something look good, but the experience as a whole is positive. And I think that's part of what makes our job so enjoyable.
So I think the important thing for me is that we do make sure we meet with our customers and our users, and that we're not sitting behind the desk and making assumptions as a whole group of stakeholders in the business, but actually we are reaching out to our customers. They are representative of the people that are actually visiting our websites and using our products and services. And so I really would advocate for designers to really understand that problem they're trying to solve, and by understanding that problem, you need to meet with the people who are using your products and services.
And so I guess it begs the question that if you're not meeting with your customers, if you're not meeting with those users, are you actually doing UX?